Hello and welcome. For China Solved, I'm Andrew Hubert, and this is the China Negotiator. So you're in a trade war. Episode 30, Wait and See is over, but there may be a window. The takeaway. Many of us have taken a wait-and-see approach in this trade war, often out of necessity, but that's coming to an end. This could be a long, dark winter. There is a window of opportunity that's coming up, but it does not last long. Let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. Wait and see. For most of us, wait and see was a necessity because we did not have the best information. We didn't have the best data. We had incomplete information or conflicting information and bad messaging. People, at the top weren't really clear on what they wanted. The U.S. is just starting to talk about costs right now. That's one of the bad information points. People are describing the tariff as a tax that China would pay. And that's simply not the case. The consumer almost always pays at least 100% of the tariff, sometimes more. And the U.S. is only starting to talk about those costs now. On the China side, they've done their initial analysis and they've decided the news doesn't get much worse, so they don't have that much of an incentive. The risk and the challenges of the wait and see were that we were, it was like the bad old days when we didn't have clear information. There were secret strategies, secret plans, hidden agendas, and people negotiating about negotiations, which is never a good sign, especially in Asia. There was no negotiating track or process that you could really analyze. And it's still unclear if this is about trade or IP, about technology, about industrial policy, about espionage, South China Sea, Taiwan, North Korea. There seem to be a lot of issues that are all balled up into one right now. And that's one of the things we've been waiting and seeing about. And the benchmark I'm looking at here has to do with the calendar. Xi and Trump may or may not meet at the G20 in Buenos Aires on November 29th. As of today, they said that they were going to meet but take trade off the table. And remember, the main benchmark I'm watching is that the tariff on $200 billion in Chinese exports pops up to 25% from 10% on January 1st. And that, to me, is the key factor in all of this. So as we make decisions about what course we're going to take, let's look at the long, cold winter scenario. The last embargo, the last organized trade effort that we conducted against China lasted from 1950 to 1971. And the most favored nation status that it brought about continued for like another 15 years or so. If that happens this time, if we go into a Cold War situation, we can expect to see the world split in terms of spheres of influence. And my guess is that China is going to end up with de facto control of Southeast Asia, the ASEAN nations, and Africa. And they're going to continue to push westward from where they are into Central Asia, the stands, and they will have robust trade with Russia and with Iran. So on the U.S. side, the sphere of influence is hopefully going to be North America, Canada and Mexico, and hopefully Western Europe. The other thing we can expect in the long winter scenario is that China 2025 or 2030, whatever we're saying now, but China's push to achieve technical dominance in key areas is going to become a national obsession. If you want evidence or a second opinion, take a look at Li Kai-Fu's new book, AI Superpowers. And it happens to be on sale right now on Kindle, if you want the e-version, 99 cents. And he tells you the story of this trade war or of this culture war from the perspective of artificial intelligence. And that's science, not a Terminator. The risk and challenge of the long winter is that the new normal becomes no resolution and no real negotiation. And it's just a slow lose-lose. Expectations are low, and that makes decision makers delay decisions or reduce investment, which in turn lowers expectations. It's self-reinforcing, and it's terrible. And the benchmarks I'm watching here, again, with the midterm election, it's a big event. I'm not just looking at the winners and losers. I'm looking at who is saying what about China. And no one is really saying anything. There is this general consensus on both sides of the aisle that we are, as a nation, kind of anti-China, but no one really likes the tariffs or the way it's going. When it comes to the second benchmark, once again, I am looking at the calendar, and I'm looking at if we get those tariffs to automatically kick up on the 1st. At that point, it really starts to wreck people's bottom lines. So it's going to force people up and down the supply chain to choose sides. And that's going to have a bit of a shock on the China side, but we don't know where all the pieces are going to land. Other benchmarks I'm looking at in the in the long winter scenario are the stock market and fourth quarter U.S. GDP. If this starts to really hurt the U.S. economy, Trump is going to feel a lot of pressure to get out of this somehow or to amp it up. I'm also looking at Xinhua and People's Daily, the number of references they make to containment when referring to the U.S., and vanguard of global trade when referring to the PRC. And of course, any military display in South China Sea or Taiwan Straits just ups the chances that we'll have the cold winter scenario. But there is a window. At the beginning, there was hope that the U.S. was using really exaggerated threats to force an issue and then would stand down once the real negotiation started. That really hasn't happened yet, but if the U.S. wants to de-escalate this, it does have a window between the G20 of November 20th and the automatic tariff boost on January 1st. The way forward is to segment trade and non-trade issues and to decide to deal with trade issues quickly and professionally. This would be the finance team, and there is room for a face-saving win-win. Trump can declare victory, and she can, have piloted the ship of China commerce through some more rocky waters. Then you deal with the non-economic issues as slowly and painfully and humiliatingly as you want to. And this is where Navarro comes in, and Bolton, and that Leitzinger guy. They can be as humiliated and long-winded as they feel like, because the rest of us are able to get on with our lives and do work. And the risk and challenge here is all about the timing. If there is a time to minimize damage, it's between now, essentially, and January 1st. After January 1st, the tariffs automatically become punitive, and it becomes very, very hard to walk it back. If one wanted to fizzle this all away, like they did with a certain wall between Mexico and the United States, then the holidays would be the perfect time to do it. You would be buried in the news cycle, but someone could suddenly pop up on Twitter and say that he had negotiated a Christmas gift for the American people. On the other hand, any new provocation on Taiwan or South China Sea would just escalate the conflict and spark the long winter scenario. Final word, wait and see is coming to an end. If the U.S. wants to de-escalate and segment commercial and non-commercial issues, then we can walk away with this being a minor bump in a road that leads somewhere where we're going to decide later. If, however, January rolls around and the tariffs kick up to 25%, as they are scheduled to, then look for relations to go into a free fall. Thanks very much for China Solved. I'm Andrew Hubert. I will speak to you again soon.